Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Allen, and I'm joined by my usual broadcast partner, former NHL defenseman Tom Laidlaw, who played 11 seasons for the New York Rangers and Los Angeles Kings. You are watching the Laidlaw and Allen Report. Comes to you twice a week to talk all things hockey. And Tom, I want to start out by talking about Kirill Kaprizov of the Minnesota Wild, Rookie of the Year. Got every vote but one for Rookie of the Year. I mean, this is not your standard rookie. This is a guy who's 24 years old, came from Russia where he was already a star. And when it's time to get a new contract, he only had 1 year on his contract. He wants to be paid like a real star. And he wants a kind of a short deal with a lot of money involved in it. And the Wild, because, he's not that far from unrestricted free agency, want a longer term deal. And Kaprizov, using the only leverage he has signed a tentative deal as of September 1st, or at least the reports say he has, with the CSKA, the Red Army, Mr. Putin's team.
Oh, I didn't know it's Putin's team. Oh, okay.
Yeah, for sure. That's his favorite team.
Yeah.
Generally in these situations, you say the same thing. This is all negotiating. I'm assuming you believe that now, but
yes.
What are your thoughts?
Well, he's not going to get paid as much money over in Russia as he is over here. So, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he could.
They supposedly offered him $10 million for a year.
Oh, well, I guess he just get more.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So
I don't buy it. They can't afford to do that over there. They're not generating the revenus enough to pay that. Maybe it's is it Putin's team? Does he own it or he's
no, he doesn't own it. But okay. That's what they say. He's invested in it. In terms of emotionally and so forth, and there's been a lot of just crazy social media reports on this. Somebody said, how could they offer them? They're already at their cap already. So some people aren't even buying that the offer is legitimate. And other people say, you got to be careful with this guy because a lot of Russian players, they're not all like Alex Ovechkin. Alex Ovechkin wants to play in the NHL, as he says, because it's the best league in the world. But some guys like the idea of playing in the KHL. They're back home. They don't have to fool with the language. It's a shorter season, a fewer games, a little less so likely that they're going to be run over by a train in the middle of a game. All the above. So I think you do have to take it somewhat seriously, even if it is a negotiating point. Yeah,
you do have to take it somewhat seriously, but looking long term, the agent as well has got to be thinking to himself, this isn't the answer. Obviously, he's not going to go back to Russia and stay. But again, it's a 1 year deal. You're pocketing $10 million. He's not going to get $10 million a year from Minnesota right now. Maybe he does somewhere down the road. So I think it's bluffing. And the problem I have when you do that as an agent, if you're bluffing, if it is a bluff, and I think it is, well, what if they call your bluff? And then now you've got no credibility whatsoever. Like his leverage right now is to say, I'm going to go back to Russia and play. And if you overplay that hand, then now again, your credibility is shot. You can't use that again, or it's harder to use that again. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. Other than, this is a little bit, like if it was, who was the guy? Anthony Ciu was threatening when he was with Detroit to go over playing the KHL. And, people shrugged at that, but Kaprizov is already an elite level player. He's not he's the Minnesota Wild's best player. Like they're not. Well, maybe they started out that way. I have no idea. By the way, I don't blame the Wild for this whatsoever. They have actually offered him, from what reports have it, a substantial amount of money if he'll sign a long term deal.
Right.
Because they think he's the real deal. And if anybody who watched him last year, I mean, he is very dynamic. Although he wasn't great in the playoffs, but he's adjusting to life. But he was every morning if you turned on the NHL Network, he was on there with something he did.
It's interesting, right? The team is fighting for a longer contract, and the player wants a shorter one. And you characterized why very well. But it's just, it's kind of counter to where it used to be in the past, right? The teams that want a shorter term deal, was there injuries? Did the player not live up to expectations? When the players just wanted to lock up for as long as possible. So,
I mean, Kaprizov supposedly wanted a 3-year deal, which really just walks him right up to the full length.
Well, at least like in New York with Shesterkin, they bought 2 years of his unrestricted free agency with that contract.
Yeah.
But it's still short too, though, right?
It is short, but what do you think on? Has he shown you $5.5 million worth?
No, he showed me that he can be a $5.5 million player. Like he had some injuries, some inconsistency. When he first came up, when Henrik Lundqvist was still there, was that 2 years ago? Yeah, man, you could see right away under control. Like when we talk about Vasilevsky, when I watched him play over in Russia, you can just tell this kid's really something special. And Shesterkin's the same way. He's got that in him. Yeah. But again, if they're wrong, it's not a huge number for him. I mean, it's close to $6 million a year, but it's 4 years. So if they're wrong on him, I think it's the deal's kind of interesting, right? Because now they're both sides are taking a look at each other. They got a 4-year little dating period here, and then if they want to move forward and sign another contract, they can. I would think that if he's playing well, they're going to go to him early and get him locked up too. So,
well, as early as you can go, 1 year.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
Yeah, but I mean, I like him as a goalie. I agree with you. I think he's going to be one of the top goalies in the league. But I was surprised that they paid him right away. Although you raised a good point. They're really buying some of his free agent time.
Yeah. And it was interesting. Larry Brooks had this written in the paper, I think it was yesterday, that's the largest second contract a goaltender has ever gotten. So they come out of their entry level deal. They usually sign like a bridge deal, and then they get the real big deal like Vasilevsky has done. So that says a lot. It was Bobrovsky that had the largest at that time in Columbus.
Yeah. With goaltenders, beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah.
Like, you're with New Jersey and you get Bernier at $4 million. Yeah. But Freddie Anderson, who's been a starting goalie and who I think actually, not counting last year when he was injured and before that before he was injured, he hadn't been playing all that well. He's been a pretty consistent goalie. He gets 4.5. So, the backup Bernier got 4. Freddie Anderson, who's been a number 1, got 4.5. There's been some other contracts with goalies as well that I went, I don't know what they're doing. Martin Jones, too, hasn't been good in 4 years.
I know, like you can't rely on him at all. I don't think. I hate to say that, but
I feel the same way. And I wouldn't, as I've said this before, like I think he deserves a chance to get his game back together because he was a quality goalkeeper, but he hasn't been in 3 seasons. So for him to get his game back together, he should be doing that in Arizona or Buffalo or a team like that, not with the Philadelphia Flyers who don't quite know where Carter Hart is. So
and that's the thing with Philly. Their goaltending really is just still the same old thing, right? It's like, who do you count on? If Carter Hart plays
I don't know. I mean, their defense wasn't very good either, but Carter Hart wasn't good. There's no way around it.
Yeah.
When I watched them last year, and I like them better than you do, the team, and I really like what they did this offseason. I don't see one negative aspect of their deals. I think
that's true. They've added really good players. And I was thinking about this the other day too. I want to see them play. Like I can look and say, look, I thought the team last year should have been good.
Yeah, right? No, that's fair. I mean, in my mind, like everybody sort of downplays Voracek's statistics, but he could still play. He's a productive guy. Yeah. He's a good playmaker, and they didn't want him on the team anymore. But and they got, in my mind, a better player in Cam Atkinson.
So, and a younger player too,
yeah, and he kills penalties, and he's got a lot going for him, and he's a better goal scorer, obviously, than Voracek. The 3 defensemen we've got have all been top pairing defensemen for different reasons. Yandel was a top pairing guy because he was just a terrific offensive guy when he was in. But all those guys should be able to make significant contributions. But again, Shesterkin gets. What was it? 5.5, right? Average.
It's closer to 6. I think it's 5.8 was the average.
Was it 5.8? Okay.
Yeah.
So Carter Hart gets 3.97 or 3.93, whatever it was. Like, how do you compare those two?
How long was Carter Hart's contract? Do you know?
His first one?
Had his second.
3 years. 3 years.
3 years. Okay. So again, you're probably not buying any because I don't think you're buying.
You're not. He's still young. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But Yeah, it's interesting. And contracts are funny. The Red Wings re-signed Jacob Vrana, and he ended up getting 5.25 for 3 years. Now, I had projected he was probably going to get, 1-year deal because that's what Yzerman's been giving, 1 or 2-year deals. And I thought if it was a 1-year deal, it was probably going to be 4.25, 4.5 maybe. And for a 2-year deal, it might have been 4.75. So he gave them an extra year at 3 years. So now they gave him 5.25. Like that seemed like a real reasonable deal. Like the two teams just sort of, or the two parties came together and, worked it out.
And we're seeing that, right? These younger players coming off the entry level contracts are a lot more teams doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So that that was interesting. We should let's talk a little bit about Tony Esposito, who passed away. Part of one of the greatest brother acts in NHL history. I mean, obviously there are some pretty famous ones in the Halls and father son and brother Dennis. But it's a pure brother combination. Tony and Phil. Tony was at the top of the goaltending heap, and Phil, of course, was among the top of the scoring players in the NHL. That's a pretty darn good tandem.
And then started the Tampa Bay Lightning too, one of the league's most successful teams. Well, they've done a lot of stuff. Two dynamic personalities too. Obviously, Phil is the most dynamic of that group, but Tony, walk in the room, he had that kind of swagger to him as well. He was a confident guy. When they were involved with Tampa, I was in the agent business, so if I had players there, I had to negotiate a contract, usually with Tony, and he was funny. It was when we had the new CBA in I guess it was 05 then. I guess that's when it was. They changed the CBA to where the rookie bonuses could not, if he hit all the bonuses, they could not exceed the entry level salary cap. There's a cap on the number there. So the bonuses factored in that, and you had to assume that he was going to win all the bonuses or get all the bonuses. So Tony and I did the contract, and it was going to go beyond the cap. And I said, Tony, that's not gonna fly. He says, oh, Tommy, come on, let's just throw it in there. And I didn't want to do it because then you look like you're not paying attention to what's going on with the CBA, especially when Bob Goodenow was running it back then. So it must have been before because Bob got fired. But surely enough, they sent it back. The league kicked it back to Tony. So Tony just would do whatever I wanted to at that point. He just trusted me. I think part of it was that we knew each other from before. I was a former player, but he was a great guy. He had a huge heart.
Yeah, the Espositos, you make a good point about starting that franchise. That franchise was founded on Phil Esposito's will. Like he didn't even have his financial aspect, his financial backing all together when they gave him that contract. I mean, he had it, a preliminary outline. He had a generalized deal, but he basically got the franchise because he agreed to pay exactly what the NHL was offering instead of trying to negotiate like some of the other owners were. He just said, no, I'll pay whatever it is you say we gotta pay. And also he was Phil Esposito. He had a big personality. He was, he showed up and, his dog and pony show was a little more entertaining than, the businessmen that were trying to get teams. And, he just, as it turned out, like the financial backing of it, changed, and they ended up with a Japanese company owning them, and at one point Steinbrenner was going to be involved. I'm not sure.
That's right. I forgot about that. That's right. Yeah.
I think he was involved for a very short time in a very small way. So it was kind of crazy in the beginning, but it all worked out. And there's a statue of Phil out, right at Tampa Bay Arena. So
I told you we had him on a show with the Thursday afternoon guys, right? Did I tell you that?
Yeah.
I'll tell the story again. It was hilarious. So Phil gets on, so we played together. He also traded me in the whole bit, but so we're still friends and everything. And he says, Tom, am I allowed to swear? I said, well, Phil, maybe once in a while you could drop an F-bomb if you want, but we're trying to keep it fairly clean. Well, I'll tell you, he must drop the F-bomb 100 times. And some of the stuff he said about players, I had to finally erase the video of the show. He's great. I think he just felt like it was all his old buddies were all sitting around telling stories.
Phil was fun. I loved talking to Phil. He just was like shoot from the hip. So
still is.
I remember I wrote something in the newspaper in USA Today, and one of the local beat writers asked him about it. And he goes, I say so many different things to so many different people that I forgot what I say to whomever. I just can't keep it all straight. So that was his explanation for not having it. And he was famous for coming up with an idea for a trade, dropping it with the media, and then having them print it, and then you'd be asked about it, and he goes, "Yeah, what do you think of that trade?" And so I think it's pretty good. How does Philadelphia feel about it? He goes, "Oh, I haven't even asked them yet." So yeah,
that's funny.
Phil was fine. Oh, that was different league then. It's all the leader of any organization sets the tone.
Yep.
And Gary Bettman is buttoned up.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. He likes all the I's dotted, all the T's crossed before you do anything. He's not, he would not be a guy who would have accepted Phil Esposito's plan for a franchise.
Yeah, not at all. Yeah. He would love Phil, but he wouldn't love hanging around, but
Yeah. But, and because of that now, like, I think all the general managers are all buttoned up. Just like you said, you didn't like to send in a contract that you knew wasn't going to pass and you thought you looked bad. Well, now nobody wants to do that.
Yeah, totally. That never happens now.
Yeah. They don't. Although occasionally things do get rejected, and sometimes I think it's just a mistake in the typing of the contract to be, So.
But that is nowadays as an agent now, if you send in a bad contract, this is something really unique about the deal you put together. Yeah, it really looks at you like, how do you do that? Like, it's just almost impossible to do. Hey, I didn't see this. Susan, who's on top of things always, what do you think about Robin Leonard's comments about the Sabres training staff? I didn't have to see that.
I didn't see it either. I think she just reads everything that's out there because she's always on top of it.
She is. I'm assuming Robin Leonard didn't have very many good things to say about the training staff based on what it sounds like. If that's the case, I mean, I'm sure he was probably asked about Robert Eichel and his Jack Eichel and his situation too. So another black eye for the.
Well, Sabres. It's interesting that through Robin Leonard's work and to overcome his issues, I think part of that for him, and one of the reasons that I think it's helped him, is he's become an advocate for mental health.
Totally.
And he's at the forefront, and man does not lack courage when it comes to defending, athletes. I noticed with the Simone Biles situation, he had much to say and so forth.
This comes more stuff on the Cam and Strick podcast. Had high ankle sprain and put on bike one week later. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I still think if the Sabres were smart, they'd let Eichel have his surgery, the one he wants to have, and then I think it'll be much easier to trade him once people see him. That he's recovering, and he's a young man. The likelihood of him recovering is very high. So. But I'm sure there are legal reasons. I'm sure there are insurance reasons. I'm sure they have their reasons why they're not doing it. It's always a little more complicated than we want to make it.
It just makes Buffalo look so incompetent, though. I mean, I hate to say it. We're talking about Kevin Adams before, a former player. He's the GM there now, and you hope he does well. But with all this stuff happening on his watch, well, part of it is on his watch, man.
Well, plus it looks like they have a lack of compassion. I mean, honestly, he's really just saying, I've looked at this, and for my medical care, I would like to do this. And they're saying, no, we want you to do what we want you to do. I mean, it's not that simple because I'm sure there are insurance. I don't even know whether insurance would even cover that surgery. I mean, I have no idea. So I'm sure it's more complicated than that, but that's how it comes across. Yeah,
it does. Yeah, they want to win the battle, right? And again, it's with either your star player, if he's still on the team, or somebody that you're trying to trade and get a whole bunch for. It's like,
I was going to ask you too. We did a column. I did a column recently where I pointed out all of these trade rumors that we heard, and nothing happened with them.
Yeah,
Eichel in Buffalo. How long have we been listening to that?
Yeah.
Johnny Gaudreau. He was going to be traded. Remember?
That's right.
Yeah. Tarasenko. He was, as good as gone. He was going to go to the New York team. Now, I'm not saying that these won't happen. Zucker in Pittsburgh. He was going to be traded. and they were going to use that to be able to get somebody who's a little bigger, a little tougher. He was going to be the guy, Matt Dumba. And then they cleaned that up a little bit with the trades they made. So, he was going to be vulnerable to being taken.
So I got to say one name to you, Joe Sakic.
Yeah.
Maybe they all learned from Joe Sakic. With the
Well, yeah, but now they're actually talking about Goodrow signing him. So I don't know. I don't you think he'd be better off to be traded? I think it would look at both the team and the player.
Totally, it hasn't worked out there. He's got a ton of talent, but he hasn't been playing up to that talent for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I thought he was better last year than he was the previous year, but I just think a change of venue would be good for him. I just feel like the fans, Canadian fans are great fans, but they're also they hold their players to a much higher standard than you often see in American cities.
Sure. Yeah.
Just because they're just more emotionally invested. So,
well, I think they're more intelligent about hockey. They think that. I'm not saying they are.
Yeah. No. I mean, you're right about that. And in some cases, their level of understanding is quite sophisticated. In Toronto, I'm just always amused at the level of on what they debate. You don't usually get the kinds of debates that you get in those cities about who the third center should be. Where
how the power play is run, that kind of stuff.
And like in Detroit, they're talking a lot about entries into the zone and stuff, which is why their power play failed. But they kind of leave it at that. Where if that same conversation was being held in, say, Montreal or Toronto, it would be a lot more elaborate. There would be much more to it, and it's just kind of the culture of the city. That's why I love nothing better than being at a playoff game in Montreal.
Montreal or Toronto on a Saturday night. The whole city
it's alive. Everybody's talking about it. The bartenders, the cab drivers, and the talk radio is just constant. And you read in the newspaper that if it was going to start on a Monday, that somebody would say, I went to church Sunday and the priest said, let's pray for the Canadians. That. It's just all that. So it is amazing. But
how about the rise of John Cooper? When he started off, what was he doing? He wasn't even in. Was he a lawyer or something?
Well, he started as a lawyer, and then he ended up in junior hockey. A guy said, he did a good job with an amateur team and said, you should take this further. And, like he was a hot property when he was in the American Hockey League. He and Blashill, they were American League, top American League coaches. They were actually good friends as well. And his strength is, in my opinion, this is his strength, is to me, he's the prototype of the modern coach. The guy who is a real strong X's and O's guys, but he's also a communicator with the players. And when you say communicator, oftentimes people say that they're thinking, well, he's kind of soft, he wants to talk to the players. But that's not necessarily the case with Cooper. I don't think he's soft at all.
Especially with that group of talented players they've got in Tampa. And obviously we're talking about him getting selected to coach the Canadian Olympic team in 2022. Right. But I think that's a great choice because of that, right? Because you've got all those star players. There's some big egos there. They're all used to being the guy. And now you have to have a coach that's making the right decisions for the team. He can't care about that individual. But like you said, it appears that he has that reputation with the players, that he's a great communicator. So,
I just think he figures out a way to get the most out of them. And I think he's got a high level of sophistication in terms of, understanding not only the X's and O's, but the psychology of the game and, how to motivate players. I remember I once had a conversation with Scotty Bowman, and, this is well into his career. And he just said, I always felt that if a guy didn't score as many goals as you thought he should score, that's on you. So he says, your job is simply to get them to play at their highest level.
Right.
So if they're not, you got to look at yourself first as a coach.
That's interesting.
He just said, it's up to you to find some way to do it, whatever is necessary.
Scotty did have some unique takes in the game. I remember when Philadelphia played Detroit in the playoffs, and Scotty was in the finals, and Scotty was coaching. And it was when the Legion of Doom was together, right, with Lindros, Leclerc, and I can't remember who else was. And that line had just run over top of everyone. Big, strong guys are fast. And the question was, who is Scotty going to play against him? And he had Larry Murphy and Nick Lidstrom. And I was like, what are you doing? Like, they're going to get run over. But he was smart enough to realize that he didn't have anybody big enough and strong enough to battle those guys. So why bother trying to play that game? Just play a smart game. Like Nick Lidstrom that angle people off. When I watched it happen during the series, I go, I guess Scotty knew what he was talking about. I can't really recall that ever happening in the past. Maybe it had happened, but it was brilliant by Scotty. Yeah.
Yeah, I always thought with matchups too, and I know some coaches felt that way too. Like, yeah, you got to be careful with them. You don't want guys who are going to be completely overmatched. But I always think you got to put best on best. If you're the best defensive pairing, and that no matter what your size is, you got to be out there against them.
I agree totally. Yeah.
And that's the way. And same thing. I never used to like and we don't do it so much anymore. But when I was young, you oftentimes would put, your third line checkers on your, thing. And I'd say, why would you do that? Then those guys are playing a lot more than they should. And just put your best line out there. So
remember the old days of shadowing somebody like Steve Casper would shadow Wayne Gretzky. Steve Casper was with.
Oh yeah, well yeah. You remember Jan Eriksson would be.
Yeah.
He'd be climbing in, like he'd know what kind of gum the guy was chewing. He'd
Robert Fatorik, when he was coaching out in L.A., he had Mike Allison following Mario Lemieux around. We were playing out in L.A. And by that time, Mario played quite a bit, so he's pretty smart. He'd go stand out of the blue line, and in their zone, he'd stand in the blue line right beside me. And I'd try to get away from it. He'd follow me around, and Mike's follow him around. It's like he was taking two players, so he was smart. He was good.
Well, it's just like when they even used to shadow sometimes Guy Lafleur on the power play. And so he would just leave the zone, and he would say after the game, "Then we're 4-on-3. I like our odds." And
totally.
So he was more than willing to do that. But just to frustrate. I know Bobby Hull. He just died too. Brian Watson died, and he was the shadow for Hull. And at some point, Hull stopped saying his name. He said, "You guys already earned too much money at my expense."
That's right. Yeah, that's funny.
So he just didn't say his name, but those were legendary. But you just can't do that anymore because that just it's too many minutes for those guys to play. But that's the way they did it. I remember
big experiment last night here at the Laidlaw household. I had a frozen pork chop in the freezer. And I wanted to eat it. I didn't have time to thaw it, so I went right into the air fryer with the frozen pork chop. Wasn't sure how it was going to turn out, but nice and juicy.
Well, that's the whole idea of an air fryer, right? You know that.
What?
So, to be able to do things like that.
Well, it's just a regular oven, though. I would have thought I was going to burn it outside if I put pork chop. It was nice thick. It was like a 2-inch thick pork chop.
We take stuff out of the freezer all the time, put it in the air fryer. It just allows you to do that.
I questioned myself. Huh?
No, you were right on, man. I'm sure it was good. I mean, you got to be careful with it, but
but it did though. It didn't charbroil the outside or anything like that because it had to cook so long. But
my wife's wife, I always say to her, it's the constant thing is, what should I put this on? Because I want to get the temperature right. And she says, just put it on 5, and then when it's at 5, look at it. She says because you can always add more time, but you can't take it away if you.
That is true.
So she always just has me, and there's so much wisdom in that, but. As I'm just not I just want to get it right the first time.
I know. You want to set the temperature, come back to it when it's done, and then
right.
Cook properly. You do have to maintain it.
Right. And I know you do that because I see your show. So speaking of that, we had a smoothie this morning.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, my wife was going out of town. She has unfortunately a memorial service to attend, and so she was cooking. She was blending a smoothie, and she said, this is one of those ones, it's a serving for 2. And she says, I'm going to name the ingredients. And she goes, let me know when you won't drink it. And it was pumpkin. I said, okay. And then it was some kind of fruit. And I said, okay. And she ran off about 3 or 4 things. And I didn't object to any of them. So there was no soy or there was no, what's your thing?
Collagen peptides and whey protein, peanut butter powder.
Yeah, we didn't have any of the weird stuff that you like to drink. So I drank
CMOS too. CMOS in there.
CMOS. There was no CMOS.
Oh,
and I drank. It was good. So
good. Excellent. Excellent.
yeah.
So, were you surprised that it was good then?
Yeah, because a lot of her smoothies and stuff I'm not a big fan on, and it almost feels like I accuse her of this, and she says it's not true. Like whatever the recipe says, she wants to throw 5 jalapeno peppers in it.
Oh yeah,
Or something like that. And she says it's not really true, but I can always taste some sort of hot.
Well, it's an easier way. It's better than putting salt in. I figure you put a pepper in there, like, so it gives it more flavor.
Yeah, that's what she says too. But it was good. So
see, Susan pays attention. She's unbelievable. Yes, the skin is on the bananas, Susan. Thank you. I didn't get to that ingredient.
So okay.
She's good. She's good.
Yeah, always. What was I going to say about? And then she had a gathering. One of her soccer teammates. My wife plays soccer, and was going back to England. She was originally from England, and so she had all of her soccer team that she plays on. Came up to the lake house, and everybody was making dishes, and she made this orzo salad. Which is orzo. What is that, like? Some tiny pasta.
Yes.
It's like rice though. It looks like giant rice to me.
Yep.
But it just had loaded with vegetables, and my first thing was, this is really good. It would be better if it had some meat in it. But as it was pretty good. I had it twice. And,
nice.
So, so I'm eating healthier. You're rubbing off on me.
Your wife is too. Yes, we're both doing it. So I update. So I'm a little stubborn. So I hurt my neck was sore on Monday. So I spoke to my buddy as a trainer, Mark Puttenvik, who we do a show with. And he said, Tom, because I was putting heat on it and exercise, he said, Tom, stop. You're doing it all backwards. You need to put ice on it to keep it cold, settle things down in there. So it feels better yesterday. So of course I don't ice it yesterday, and now it's sore again today. So my own fault.
Yeah. And my wife gets on me because if I do something like that, says you got to ice it. So I put the ice pack on for 10 minutes, and then she goes, what are you doing? That's not doing you any good. So the old coaching is still trying to coach me. So we've been married 35 years. She's been coaching for 35 years.
And she's patient with you too. Like, it doesn't look like she gets mad at you.
Oh no, she doesn't. But she really wants me to follow directions the first time, so she doesn't have to come in and do it again. So
that's true.
So anyway, but we had this isn't hockey related, but I came up to the lake house. I'm working on a couple of books I wanted to finish off, and I'm up here by myself now because my wife left. But last night we had a big storm, and we have some giant trees in my yard. The big 100-footers have been here for 100 years, and one of my neighbors texted this morning said you have a tree mess in your driveway. Oh. And when I went out there, that was a really an apt description, because the tree hadn't fallen, but this huge branch had fallen off. It was probably at the 80-foot mark of the 100-foot tree. Oh. And had fallen down, and it was a big it's probably 10, 12 feet. And on the way down, it hit other branches and knocked them down. So I probably had one giant piece that's in the middle with all of its foliage still on it, and then probably have 8 or 10 smaller branches. But you still, you got to drag them. They're heavy out of the way. So I managed to get at least one side of the driveway clean to get out. But I had a tree mess this morning.
Nice. Tree mess. Here's an interesting thing. We had that swim on Saturday, and Ron, who lives in Buffalo area, Buffalo reported on the event. Very nice. Good.
Wow, that's good.
Again, that's if everybody wants to donate. Again, you can go to gigofund.org. If anybody wants to donate, that's obviously not just for the event, but year round. So great cause. A lot of veterans.
A couple other things before we go. I was just thinking today. We're in almost the middle of August now. Yeah. I mean, we're just a month away from the 2021-22 season.
I know.
Starting with training camp, and we got the rookie tournament coming up in Traverse City. Right.
So what does that do for two teams like Montreal and Tampa that went all the way to the finals? Does that help them, hurt them? What do you think?
Well, I don't think they'll be ready. I mean, it's hard. You've gone through all that. It's hard work. It's hard to gear up.
Right.
We won't see the same Montreal team that we saw in the playoffs.
Well, yeah, they're going to lose Shea Weber. And
even if they hadn't, it's hard to maintain that level.
Yeah.
Because, you didn't just turn that on and start. It was just built.
Yeah.
And you built on that momentum. Well, that momentum now is lost. So, we're starting over, and you draw a big breath and you think how hard you had to work to do all that.
Yeah.
And then, I think it weighs you down, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, totally. Oh, it is. Yeah, because it's an emotional thing too, right? You're rolling so high, and then especially they get beat so bad. Well, these games, everybody's got beat by Tampa. So Montreal, I would think Montreal, again, they're not obviously as good a team as much as Tampa is either. But I think Montreal's going to have a tougher start than Tampa is. I think Tampa will be fine.
Yeah, for sure. And they're like Tampa has been at this before. They know, what has to happen. And they're, I will say Tampa Bay's depth is eroded. There's no question about that. Mm-hmm. But, there's still great players there. Braden Point, is going to be as great as he was, maybe better.
Yeah.
And they still got Kucherov, and they've got Vasilevsky. And, the one thing about them, and I argue all the time with a friend of mine about he thinks, for example, the Maple Leafs can never win by having all that money tied up in 4 players. And I say, malarkey. You can win like that because everybody has 4 players that they're paying a lot of money to, or 5 players. In the case of Tampa Bay, they have 5 players that they're paying about almost $45 million to over 5 players, and that's over $9 million a player. However, the difference in that, where you don't see on other teams, is it's spread out. They have a $9 million goalie, they got a $9 million defenseman, and they got 3 forwards who they're paying a lot of money to. I think that's a big difference when you can spread all your top 5 salaries among 3 different positions. That is a winning formula.
Yeah, and I'm not a huge Marner fan. I know how great he is talent-wise, but I don't know how you're gonna. I don't see him right now as a guy that's going to win in the National Hockey League. He's really going to sacrifice like that. And I hope I'm wrong, but I just don't see that in him right now either. But I think you're right in that statement about spreading it out. That's another reason. When I look at Toronto, I don't look at Toronto as a contender. I look at them as a good hockey team. But I'm still looking at Colorado, Vegas, Tampa, Montreal, the Islanders, Washington. Those teams to me are all contenders. I don't see it in Toronto. But
it seems like they're going backwards in their goaltending. Like Freddie Anderson, it was always would he, could he, is he capable of? Maybe yes. We weren't really sure. But I see Peter Mrazek and Jack Campbell, and I think
they've already shown you don't know. They've shown that inconsistency is there in their game. That's why they're backup goaltenders,
right? And you're weighing that against Tampa with Vasilevsky, who you never, nobody says, well, if Tampa's goaltending is good, they'll be okay. Well, because they know their goaltending is good, and it's not going to be bad.
Right. So when does in Toronto? When does people now start questioning Kyle Dubas, the general manager?
Oh, I think they already have.
They already have?
Yeah, I think they have. People, I'm sure, have.
Especially when Lou Lamoriello goes back to the Islanders, where he could have been the GM there, but they chose to stick with Dubas. And now look at what the Islanders do. Look what he's built there, right? So.
And I think it would be a completely different team if Lou Lamoriello.
Yeah, totally. Yep.
I don't think these 2 guys would be the goaltenders. I think the defense would look a lot better.
Coaching would be different. Probably coaching would be different too.
Yeah, for sure. All right, my friend. Well, I think we've done enough damage today.
Yep.
We appreciate everyone for tuning in. If you want to read me, I'm at hockeybuzz.com or DetroitHockeyNow.com.
And if you want to listen to the radio version of this show, you can go to radio.co 365 Sports. That's radio.co 365 Sports. We'll see everybody next week.